Hello, my name is Annette DeLu, and you are listening to The Heart of You. This is season 4. I can't believe that it's actually season 4 already. Today's episode, I was really struggling with sort of how to come up with an episode that would be really good for the first episode of season 4. And I had a couple of different ideas, and those ideas will be later on in the season. But I decided to go with this one, which I feel is really near and dear to my heart because it's something that I have struggled with over the course of my lifetime and actually didn't even realize that I was struggling with it. And that is codependency. So today's episode is about codependency versus healthy relationships. It's incredible because when somebody says codependency, what do you think of? I know when I heard the word all the time prior to really understanding fully what it meant, I just thought it was, oh, well, you spend too much time together. Your lives are too enmeshed together, whatever it happened to be, until I realized that it is actually, in fact, so much more. I'm going to give you sort of 4 things that I have observed about codependency in my journey. And then I'm going to give you 4 really beautiful, healthy relationship behaviors that sort of counteract that. Now, some of these might be really difficult to be able to integrate all at once. So, if you are dealing with a codependent relationship right now in this moment, I would suggest just taking one thing at a time and sort of taking a look at it, doing that inner work. And that's why we do a lot of this inner work, right? Because we want to get into that space of pure unconditional love. The biggest thing for me in codependency was looking for my self worth or validation in another person. And I know a lot of people have this going on. I mean, quite frankly, take a look at all of the romantic comedies or romantic movies, and that's pretty much what all the leading people do is sort of look for validation within the other partner. And in movies and stuff, it's fine because it's entertainment, it's not real. But in real life, it could be a big problem because if you're constantly looking to another person to validate you, to tell you that you are worthy, to tell you that you are a beautiful person, that you are beautiful inside and out, that you are talented, all of these things. And this goes for everything. This goes for work, this goes for friendships, this goes for romantic connections. It goes for everything. Because if you are looking to another person to validate you, then ultimately we're moving into number 2, which is you are giving your power away. So, what happens when you're giving your power away? Well, ultimately, you are putting your own self worth in somebody else's hands. You stop being able to have control over your own energy, over your own person. You start making decisions that maybe are because of the other person. So instead of asking yourself, what is it that I want? You are asking yourself, what is it that they want? What would make them happy? And sometimes that can be okay. So if you're in a really beautiful, loving relationship and you are asking somebody what it is that would make them happy, and you're absolutely willing and thrilled to do it for them, that's really beautiful. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you're going around all day, every day, making decisions based on, oh, would this make my boss happy? Would this make my significant other happy? What would make you happy? And how often have you asked yourself, what would make me happy? And that's a really big question, right? It's a big question that we don't often ask ourselves. What do I want? And what would make me happy? So, giving your power away to somebody else is simply checking out of yourself. You're checking out. You're not paying attention to your intuition, to what your higher self is trying to tell you, what your body is telling you. Because our bodies are obviously super connected and they'll tell us when something is right and when it's not. Imagine that many of you out there, if you're dealing with codependency within a relationship or friendships or whatever it happens to be, there's often some physical symptoms that go along with that, either anxiety or depression or something else in that respect. Now, all of those things can be a direct result of you not listening to yourself, not listening to your intuition, not listening to your higher self. I want you to take a moment right now and just think about where it is in your life that you are giving your power away. Or for number one, where you are in a place where you are looking to another person to validate who you are, to make you feel better for your happiness. That's another really big one, right? It is looking to another person for your happiness. And I hate to tell you, but you are 100% responsible for your own happiness. And I know many people don't like to hear that, but it's true. You are responsible for your own happiness. There is not a single person on this planet who is responsible for your happiness. Well, you could say, well, this person has done this and it has made me unhappy. Well, it's possible that that happened where the person maybe did something or said something to you that made you feel unhappy. We're humans, of course, that happens, but it's not that person's responsibility to make you feel better after you don't feel good, right? It is your responsibility. So, what is it that you do in order to help yourself feel better? That's something I didn't know the answer to because I did not have the tools. I did not have the tools to know how to make myself feel better. I didn't have the tools to know what my self worth was or to really look within myself to love myself. Like I didn't know how to do those things. And this is something that happens with a lot of people because if your parents didn't know how to do this, if your parents didn't have the tools, then it is very, very likely that you also do not have the tools. Because if you have nobody who's teaching you this, then how is it that you're going to learn? You learn by your environment and by example and by all of the things that you experience in life. So if the only thing you've ever experienced was codependency and victim mentality or this or that, that's pretty much what you are going to operate from. If you recognize that that's a place that you don't want to operate from, all right, so where do you go from there? I mean, that was my problem for a majority of my adult life, which is okay, I get that I don't want to be in codependent relationships. I just didn't know how to really get out of them or how to not have a codependent relationship because I didn't know any different. I didn't know what the difference was between codependency and a healthy relationship, right? So that's what this episode is all about today. This is what I'm here to talk about is how I discovered the difference between those two things. I'm going to give you an example. One of the things that is really big, and I'm sure it's big for a lot of people, which is birthdays. Okay. In my family, birthdays were a huge deal. My mom made a huge deal out of birthdays. She basically went all out. We had parties, like it was a big deal. My mom always wanted us to feel special on our birthdays. It's really sweet of my mom to want to do that and to really make us feel really loved and special on that day. Going forward in the rest of my life, I was under the impression that, well, everybody would be treating me like I was super special on my birthday. And that simply was not the case because there have been a couple of relationships that I've been in the past where maybe the guy that I was dating birthdays weren't a big deal in his family. And so I'm sitting here waiting for some big surprise or some big thing to happen for my birthday and nothing happened and I was like, okay, so why are we not doing something for my birthday? And it's because I did not communicate. I did not communicate. Hey, birthdays are a really big deal for me. Is this something that we can do? We can celebrate. We can do something really amazing for my birthday because this is something that I really want. I did not communicate that, first of all. Second of all, had I communicated it, if he were to say something like, oh, well, birthdays aren't a big deal in my family. And so I don't really do birthdays that often. What do I do then? Well, you can either decide, okay, you know what, this is not a big deal. I can go and celebrate my birthday with my friends. I can go and hang out with my family for my birthday. I can do whatever I want to do. I'm not going to put that pressure on my significant other and place him in a position where maybe he's not comfortable. Maybe over time, he will decide that actually, you know what? I think that would be kind of fun to do that for my significant other. So maybe I'll do that. But at this moment, he's not in that place. So you can't force him or her to really be present in that moment with you in that birthday extravaganza, that birthday excitement, if that's not something that they ever grew up with. When it comes down to it, instead of basically saying, okay, I'm going to wait until my boyfriend or my girlfriend messes up for my birthday, and then I'm going to get mad at them for it. Like that is clear cut codependency. So basically, you're setting them up for failure. You're waiting, waiting, waiting. You're like, okay, are they going to surprise me? Are they going to give me a gift? Are we going to go out? Are we going to do these things? Whatever it is. And then they do nothing for you, or maybe the gift that they give you isn't what you want, or whatever it happens to be. And you're like, okay. And so then you're angry with them. Then it starts a fight. Then all of these things. So you're setting up those expectations of what the other person is going to do without even having a conversation with them. You're depending on that other person for your happiness on your birthday. And if they've already communicated to you that birthdays are not a big deal to them, then your expectations of them actually doing something extravagant for your birthday, it's likely you're going to be disappointed. What do you do with that situation? Well, you come up with something that's good for both of you. So you have a conversation about it. If the significant other says, I don't do birthdays, but yet he gives you gifts like throughout the year and flowers, or let's say he is spot on with your love languages and he's all about spending quality time with you all the time. Why are you going to sabotage something for one day just because it's your birthday? Right? What if he makes you feel special or she makes you feel special every other day of the year, but doesn't on your birthday? What are you going to do? So these are some of the examples of little dynamics that can happen within codependency. So what does that look like if you're not in codependency? If you're in that healthy, beautiful relationship energy? Like I said, that looks like you saying to your significant other, okay, great. So you're not really big into birthdays. That's fine. If you don't mind, I'm going to go and plan a big birthday bash with my friends. If you want to come, absolutely you can come. I would love to have you there. But if you don't want to come because you're not big on birthdays, that's totally fine. We can do something else later on next week that's going to be a lot of fun and we can just spend time together. That is the way you say something in a healthy relationship because you're not putting that expectation on that other person. You are not relying upon them for your happiness. You're mitigating any disappointment that you might have on the day of your birthday. And also, you're giving them an opportunity to potentially surprise you, right? They might step up in a way that you never thought that they would. But if you are constantly in this energy of almost sabotage or waiting for the other person to fail, it doesn't give them that opportunity energetically to really step up. So that's just one small example. The third thing that I found is really big in codependent relationships is asking the other person to go against the flow of their energy, or let's say the flow of what they know, how they operate, whatever it is you want to say, whether it's 3D or energetically. You're asking them to go against what they know to be true or what they feel inside in order to please you or to make you feel better. If you are in a situation where you're asking your significant other, we'll use the birthday example again. If you're in a situation where you're asking your significant other, I would like you to be at this birthday party, this huge birthday party that I am planning. Everybody's going to be there and I'm going all out and whatever it is that you're doing. And your significant other says, you know what? No, I would prefer not to go. Maybe your significant other is an introvert. Maybe they don't like big crowds. Maybe you haven't had like that really big friend integration yet. And they've only met a couple of your friends. So it might be super overwhelming for them to meet a whole crap ton of your friends without actually having being prepared. Whatever it happens to be, if they're uncomfortable with the idea of going to this big extravagant party, then you need to be okay with them saying, you know what? No, I'm not going to go. The other thing is also is that people sometimes get a little shy around money. So, what if he doesn't have or she doesn't have enough money? What if there are some troubles at home? You don't know what's going on. So, if you want to know what's going on, you can certainly ask them and say, "Hey, what's going on? What is the reason why you don't want to go?" It's okay that you don't want to go, but I just want to check in with you to see if you're doing okay. If everything is okay on your end, is there anything that you want to talk about? That is a healthy way of dealing with that situation. A lot of people would go directly into their wounding, into their hurt by saying, "Oh, my significant other doesn't want to go to my birthday, so I'm going to shut them out. I'm going to be angry. I'm going to do all of these things," which basically shut that love down. It shuts it all down. It shuts down all of those beautiful energetic connections between the two of you. It makes things difficult for you to be able to connect again. Really take a look at some of the situations you have within your current situation, whatever it happens to be, whether it's a friendship, boss, relationship, whatever it happens to be. Look at those things that you do and the dynamic between the two of you, or maybe there's a few people that are involved in the dynamic. That is certainly the case with families, right? I can tell you a story about how my sister and I have been very close throughout the course of our lifetime. And we've both been on the spiritual journey together. And it's something where we've really helped each other back and forth. I used to always joke that my sister and I sort of leapfrog each other. So, like, she goes forward a little bit on her spiritual journey, and then she kind of helps me a little bit with some tools, and vice versa. Like, I maybe leapfrog her a little bit and I give her some tools. So, like, it's been a really beautiful, like, symbiotic connection between the two of us. And I thought that for a while that pretty much all of the issues that we had growing up were completely gone. And as it turns out, some things really still pop up occasionally, which is really fascinating to me. I'll give you an example. When my father was ill before he passed, I was not able to go see him because I was stuck here with my visa situation and I couldn't go to see him. My dad was okay with that. He was like, "I want you to stay in France. I don't want you to jeopardize your visa if you come here, so don't worry about it." So I called my sister, and because I couldn't go see my dad, I called my sister and said, "Okay, because I can't go, you need to go." Of course, she went and she was going to go anyway, but even that little dynamic that we had, that is me trying to make her do something so I feel better. I was feeling bad about the fact that I couldn't go to see my dad while he was ill. And so, in order to make myself feel better, I'm calling my sister and saying, "Hey, you need to go now." Well, that's not necessarily the right way to do it. Had I called her and said, "Hey, Michelle, I'm feeling really bad about the fact that I can't go see dad. Are you going to go see him?" And see if she was planning on doing it anyway. And if she hadn't planned on going because we both live far away, then I needed to be okay with that. I needed to be okay with her decision to say, "No, I actually can't go to see him right now." Whether it's because of work, it doesn't matter what the reason is. Whatever the reason is, you have to respect the other person's decision to either do or not do something. It's funny because I didn't even realize that I was doing it. And she called me up one day and she was like, "You know what, Annette? I've been wanting to talk to you about this for a bit because sometimes this comes up and I had not talked to you about it previously, but I want to talk to you about it now." And I said, "Okay, go ahead." And so she told me exactly how she felt about that. And I was just like, "Oh my God, you're right." And I totally did not even see it. I didn't see it at all because it was something that I had done since I was very young. We have these habits and these patterns that we grasp onto, and we think that it's part of love, it's part of unconditional love, when in fact, it's really not. That is part of codependency. All right. So, this next one, number 4, which is trying to solve somebody else's problems. This is also the savior complex. Yeah. Savior complexes are tough. They're tough, tough, tough because you feel like you're doing good. You might be helping people and you legitimately might be helping people, which is great. But are you really helping them? When we look at it from the standpoint of the Akashic Records, we sign up to have certain experiences. if you are like swooping in and actually taking away the experience that the person needs to have, then you're basically just prolonging this lesson that they need to learn anyway. Yes, of course, it's always great to have help occasionally, and it's great when you can help each other. Of course, I help people get through their patterns. And, when I look through their Akashic records and help them see what they've been doing over the course of lifetimes, that's helping. Yes, of course, that's helping. But that's giving tools. Like you're giving people the tools to be able to get through the patterning or succeed or whatever it happens to be. You're not doing the work for them. So that's where that whole savior complex comes in is, oh, there's a damsel in distress. I need to help her. Well, what does that do? That does two things. It prevents you from doing what you need to do because you're focused on somebody else and you're not listening to your own intuition. The other thing it does is it actually ends up preventing the other person from learning how to pick themselves up the next time something like that happens. I'm sure all of you know somebody or have heard of a story of a friend who has been in a relationship with an alcoholic or an addict of some sort. I myself was in a relationship with an addict years and years and years ago. And it is super, super difficult. It's a difficult thing to do, is to not try to help, not try to save. Ultimately, trying to save somebody who is in that addictive space is not doing them any favors. And that is that codependency. That is that enabling, trying to cover up things or trying to fix things for them because they can't do it themselves, whatever it happens to be. What do you do with all of this information of what codependency is? There are many, many other examples of how codependency shows up within relationships. These are just the four that kind of showed up in my life. I would say the major four themes that showed up in my life. In regards to the fourth one, which is that savior complex, if you're talking about addictions, I want to give you a heads up that later on in this season, I will be doing a full episode about addictions and the spiritual awakening because they really do go hand in hand. And there are many reasons why. Healthy relationships. Let's move into that portion of today's show. So, what does it look like? Well, it looks like giving them the tools that they need to succeed. When you teach somebody, you're not doing the work for them. You are teaching them the skills that they need in order to do it themselves. The one thing that always eluded me when I was a kid was, people used to always say to me, you need to love yourself. You need to love yourself. And I was like, I don't even know what that means. Like, what does that mean? And just saying that to somebody over and over again is not going to help them to understand the concept. So, what do you do instead? Oh, okay. So, to love yourself, what does that mean? Well, that means getting rid of the negative self talk. Oh, okay, cool. So, that's one thing that I can do. It also means getting rid of belief systems that aren't yours and understanding that some of the belief systems that were handed to you were not even true to begin with. It is about going through your shadow work and understanding that some of those wounds that you have are not necessary anymore. You don't need to look at those anymore. You don't need to go through that pain anymore. That's what self-love looks like, is going through all of those steps to be able to really come to a place of balance and peace within yourself. And when you can get to that space, it is such a beautiful space to be in. And that is how you are able to be in that beautiful, healthy relationship. Because if you're still in your wounding, it is really difficult to end up in an unconditionally loving relationship. When you are asking somebody to do something, or you want to have a conversation, or whatever it happens to be, and the other person says no, you have to be okay with that. And you have to be able to say, okay, no problem. Let me know if you want to have this conversation another time. Let me know if you ever want to do this thing again. If you don't like, let's say, going to the opera. Okay, so your significant other might not ever want to go to the opera. That's totally fine. You can find somebody else to go to the opera with. If your significant other doesn't like doing certain things that you like to do, those are all 3D things and they ultimately kind of don't matter. What matters is the connection you have, the heart connection you have, the energetic connection that you have. I remember in a relationship I had, I couldn't understand why the boyfriend I had at the time, he would be gone for 3 weeks on a business trip or whatever it happened to be. And he never really seemed to miss me while he was gone. And I couldn't quite understand why. And I was like, okay, so he doesn't really miss me. So he must not be that interested in me. He must not really like me if he doesn't miss me while he's gone. It wasn't until I realized that that missing feeling, that longing, that, oh my gosh, I can't live without you feeling, those are all codependency. Now, I'm not saying that you can't miss somebody because, of course, I miss people all the time because I live in a different country. My family's in the United States. I'm here in France. I'm always missing people. Like I miss hanging out with certain people. I miss spending time with them, of course. That missing comes from a place of peace and love and not, oh my gosh, I have to see this person or else like I'm not complete or I'm not whole, right? It is more of a, hey, I would really love to see this person because the last time we hung out, we had such a great time. Let's do that again. When it comes to that longing, that sort of, I'm going to use the Twilight series as an example, like that Bella Swan, like, oh my God, I can't live without him kind of situation. We glorify that in terms of love. We think that that is love, when in fact, if you're having that feeling of obsession and, oh my God, I can't live without this person, that is basically just showing you that you have something to look at within yourself. What is it that you are not giving yourself that is causing you to be in that dire need of the company of that other person? The healthy relationship looks a lot like being able to walk your path side by side with another, and you're able to come together and share that experience. That is what unconditional love looks like. If your partner, your friend, whoever it is, doesn't want to do the things that you want to do, it's totally fine. If they're not able to fulfill certain needs that you have, hey, guess what? That's also fine. And you might be sitting here going, how is that okay if they're not fulfilling my needs? Well, you need to make a decision. You need to make a decision at that point, because if this person is not able to fulfill the needs that you have, or the desires that you have in a romantic connection, and there are a lot of those items that are not being met, then it might be time to say, okay, maybe this person isn't the person for me, and really dig deep down into your heart to ask yourself, okay, are these things really deal breakers or are they not? If they are, then yeah, maybe it's time to move on. So, another aspect of this is that the other person doesn't need to do anything in order to deserve your love. Yeah, think about that for a second. The other person doesn't need to do anything to deserve your love. That is what unconditional love is. So they don't need to bring you flowers. They don't need to talk on the phone 20 hours a day. They don't need to text you 5 seconds after you send them a text. They don't have to do any of that in order to deserve your love. They simply love you. You simply love them because you do. Love doesn't come with conditions. True unconditional love does not come with conditions. And that might be hard to fathom for some people because depending on your love languages, and I really do believe that love languages are really, really helpful. So if you haven't figured out what your love language is, I highly recommend you figure that out. You can go to the website to look it up. I think it's just called the love languages. When you do that, not only are you figuring out how you receive love, but you're also figuring out how to give love to the other person. Because just because you have a particular love language, like mine is quality time, that is my top, top, top love language, spending quality time. So for me, that means that my partner, in order for me to feel that warm and fuzzy, my partner, I would prefer them to spend quality time with me. But what happens if they don't? Well, I need to be okay with that. I need to be okay with them not spending all that time for a period of time. Now, if it is for a long time, if it's always, then that's where I reassess. Okay, maybe this relationship isn't for me Because if I'm looking for somebody who spends a lot of time, quality time, not quantity, but quality time, then that means that that is something that's really important to me. Now, just because I want quality time doesn't mean that that's what the other person wants. So you have to give love in their love language. So if their love language is gifts, let's say, or words of affirmation, then you need to work on the fact that you are giving them words of affirmation or gifts always, if you are guided to. If you feel like this comes naturally to you, that you're like, yes, I know this is their love language and I definitely want to work on this with them, then yeah, go ahead and do it. If you have the desire to do it and you're like, yes, I'm all about this, let's do this, awesome. But if every fiber in your being is like, God, I just don't like giving gifts, it's just not something I do, then you know what? That's totally fine. You don't have to force yourself to give gifts in order to be loved. So it's not that you can't come to a compromise. So if you, let's say, really don't like giving gifts, you can talk to your significant other and say, hey, look, I really don't like giving gifts, but I would really love to do this, X, Y, and Z. Okay. So let's say your partner's really good at massages. Well, I would really love to give you a massage on a regular basis or whatever it happens to be. You can come to that compromise from time to time, right? You don't have to just say, this is how it has to be. And this is how I receive love, and any other way of receiving love, it just doesn't come through. You have to really be open to the various different ways that you can receive love. That is the fourth clue that you are in a healthy relationship is communication. So big, right? It is so big. Communication is everything, because if you are operating from your wounding and you are able to communicate that with your partner, it can make all the difference in the world. So if your partner says something that is really hurtful to you, but your partner might not even think that it's a hurtful thing, they may have just been making a joke or whatever it happens to be. You can take a moment, go inward and determine, what is it that triggered me? Where are my wounds being poked at, right? And you're able to communicate with the person, hey, look, when you said this, this is how I felt. And it's because maybe you had some experiences in your childhood or in other relationships that was an echo of. And so it brought up this pain from before. Okay, so if you're looking at it, oh, all of a sudden you realize, oh, that pain is from before. That pain isn't from this relationship. That's from like two relationships ago. And okay, yeah, I guess it really doesn't apply here. Or maybe it does apply here, but maybe that is the lesson you're meant to learn. Whatever it happens to be, communicating is the key. It is the key in helping you to maintain a healthy relationship, to stay out of codependency, to be able to be sovereign in your own energy, to not give your power away, to be able to know your self worth no matter what happens. It's a beautiful thing to be able to have, and no one can take that away from you. Doesn't that sound great? Yeah, it does. Because when you live this way day to day, it eliminates the drama. It eliminates, I'm not going to say it eliminates all hurt and pain, because of course it doesn't. We're human, we feel hurt and pain, but it helps you to get over it much, much quicker, right? So I'm curious about your codependency stories. I'd be really interested to hear from you. So if you want to give me some of your revelations about codependency, feel free to email me. My email address is annette@infinitesoullove.com. You can also send me a message on my website. You can fill out the contact form. I would really like you to just sit with this information for a little bit. You don't necessarily have to do anything, but just sit with the information and maybe write down where it is you find your codependency and what it is that you can do to move into that healthy, unconditional love. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am so, so happy that you're here. And make sure to stay tuned every Tuesday, because we have some really fantastic episodes coming up this season. You can reach me at infinitesoulllove.com. You can also reach me on all social media at infinitesoulllove1111. That is TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.